One of the things that we've picked up when we're talking to people in talent or HR roles is the tight labor market right now. So really tight, like single figures, like 2-3% unemployment rate. But yet there's this high level of skills shortage vacancies, which I think in the latest report was up to 36%. So over a third of employers are saying we've got vacancies that are vacant, not because we can't find people, but we can't find the people with the skills, qualifications, or experience to do the job. So what are some of the ways that your members are maybe trying to address their skills shortage vacancies? Do you have a sense of your alternative pathways, or like what are they?
Look, I've been a huge fan of Workplus for years because I believe more employers need to look at adding more routes to employment to their portfolio. Like we have to get more people into, or just open up the opportunities. Like I said earlier, widen the net and let's bring people in. Let's look at the actual criteria that we're asking people to have for jobs, because some of them, I remember when I first moved here, I was working with an employer and they were asking for like a bachelor's degree for a job that did not require a bachelor's degree. And I was like, why is this, something that is a non-negotiable for you? You're missing a trick here. Or I would even, when I first moved to London, I would apply for different roles, looking at different retailers, and every job opportunity that I wanted was asking for a CIPD qualification. Now, I had a Society of HR Management qualification from America, but I didn't even know what CIPD was back then. Right. We're going back to 2013, but I was like, why? I could not get a job. Whereas if those employers had hired me and said, we'd really like you to have a CIPD qualification, could we partially fund that for you? Or would that be something you'd be open to? I would have been over the moon. Another piece of my learning and development, absolutely. Let's do it. But I didn't even get through the SIFT. And this is like a huge problem. So I think employers need to really look at what they're asking for. And in terms of like looking at routes to employment as a priority, apprenticeships and apprenticeship degrees are such a good way to engage those people who are economically inactive. We heard last week from Gordon at the Green Skills Action
Parks,
launch.
isn't it?
Gordon Parks, yeah. We heard that, there's a staggering numbers of people who are economically inactive. But once we can get them to buy into the brand and what we're doing, and we begin growing our own, as Gordon would have say, then you have that commitment to purpose very early on. And once you've got that commitment to purpose, the skills can be taught, the qualifications can be part of their learning and development and their ongoing training, but we just need to get them in first. And I think there's a big pool of people who would rather work in a job that they find meaning and purposefulness in than, just go somewhere because they've got the right qualifications.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. Well, you mentioned Gordon Parks, and Gordon has been a huge advocate of growing their own talent, and they've been invested in a very technical apprenticeship for decades. A lot of their now senior managers came through that route.
Yeah.
But they've also looked at higher level apprenticeships in different areas like finance and cyber and all those things as well.
Sure.
So, but yet Gordon does talk about the stats around that, and that less than 10% of employers here use apprenticeships as a talent pathway, but 32% say they want to. So there's this gap between what's happening now and what could possibly happen. So even in the context of what you've just said around the specification of a job description and pathways and all of that, what do you think needs to change with HR managers or managing directors of small firms to start to change that mindset? We're
going to get to a point where the demographics are a problem and people are going to have their hands tied. They won't really have a choice. You only need to look at how many primary schools have closed in the last, decade to know that people are having less children and there's going to be less talent out there. But I think for HR practitioners that I speak to, like putting someone through an apprenticeship to them is like either an outlying cost or it's complicated or they just don't know how to do it. And if they could understand a bit more about the benefits of that route to employment, I think they would have much more of a case study to go to the board and say, look, this is what we need to add. But when it comes to, the demographics, I just want to, as a side note, say what surprises me most about living in Northern Ireland is the amount of people I meet who do come back. They come back. So what I mean by that is I have hope that there will be more, because young people, right, they tend to graduate or leave before they go to university and they just don't come back straight away. And so we're seeing this like outpouring of young talent leaving. But in America, when I pick up my kids from school, who's there to pick them up? It's either parents, babysitters, nannies, like after school care clubs are a really big thing over there. When I pick up my kids from school here, it's the grandparents, the auntie, it's the support network that family has, or the parents. And so I think that there's something to be said about that village vibe that Northern Ireland gives off, right? I mean, people are shocked when I tell them that I've had my kids and I've raised my kids and I've done all this alone with no family support around. And the only support I do have is the after school clubs and the nurseries and, the childcare facilities. But virtually in America, I don't know a single person who lives in a neighborhood close to their family, their parents. I don't know anyone who lives in a neighborhood, the same neighborhood they grew up in, certainly not. But being here, it is such a lovely place to raise their kids. I see why people do come back to it. And, that does give me some hope that if the employers are asking the right questions, we're going to start to see those roles being filled, especially the senior roles where there's gaps. But yeah, back to your question. I was listening to a podcast yesterday on skills, as I do, the CIPD one, just to plug that. And the question was, are we more inclined to invest in skills when you know what the future requirements will be? So where does this onus sit around skills? Is it the profession that needs to drive it? Is it to be driven by education? Like, where do we think that sits? And how do we create work environments where people can actually thrive? And Dr. Adrian Waite, who is the head of talent and leadership, he's really well known. I'll quote him because it was really interesting what he said. He said, by looking at skills outside of the context of application, you're looking at skills and you're not looking at where they're being performed. You're not looking at the systems in which they're working. You're not looking at the context and the workflow and the crosses between teams. And you're just looking at skills in isolation, which is a huge mistake. We aren't colleges. We aren't in the education business. We are in the performance business. So let's look at skills within the role taxonomy. We don't develop skills outside of the context of performance. Developing skills needs to see outcomes of performance, and we need that performance in order to do the reflective practice so that we can then again develop the skills. So it's the cyclical cycle. But yeah, it was really interesting because I thought we're focusing so much on what skills do our young people need in order to do jobs of the future. But if the organizations with the jobs of the future don't have that infrastructure set up, how do we actually know what the skills are going to be? And so it's this catch-22 that I kept going around with. And my thoughts are there is going to be a shift required in capability. And more HR practitioners need to be looking at apprenticeships as a route to employment so that they're getting both the practical hands-on knowledge in the workplace as well as the education. Yep. But you need a strategic plan to provide people with new skills to succeed in the role. And employers should really be focusing not just on how we can get more employability into the workplace, but the systems and building that infrastructure to support that. And I do remember at the Green Skills launch last week, they did mention we need to get the infrastructure right. And we talked about that as well.
Yeah, I think it was summed up really well by Jonathan Martindale from Phoenix, who talked about three things. And he said, first of all, we need to understand what the skills requirements are.
Mm-hmm.
Then we need to design the pathways that people can get to that destination. And then we need to get the people.
Yeah.
So there's, it was really, I just thought it was a really succinct way of laying it out. But the difficult bit is actually agreeing. If we've got this, we've only got we've got a level of confidence about what we need. And it's the same with every decision we make is only a decision because there's imperfect information.
Exactly. We're having a guess, throwing darts at the wall.
Exactly. It's just, do you have how open to have your eyes, or how big is the dartboard? But there's a real challenge there. But I like the way, I love the way he articulated that in that podcast as well, what you've just quoted there.
It was really interesting because I often think about, we need, these young people who are, even my children who are in school, like what skills do they need? Like, we don't know yet. We don't know. Half of the jobs that you see on, the job posts right now, they're not even going to exist in 20 years' time. They will not be, like, who knows what it's going to be. Don't get into the truck driving business or anything like that.
That was my next career move, Susan. Thank you for the advice.
But I see more and more things like automation this, automation that. Yeah. I had a plumber come around because we had a leak this is back in Boston in my cousin's house. And the plumber came around to check the leak. He didn't pick up a single tool. But you know what he did need to know how to do? Was manage a drone to go up on the roof and look at the damage, assess what needed to be done. Like, never got up on a ladder. Did not, this is the job of the plumber of the future. You need to be handy with a drone. And you need to be handy with being able to use optic lasers to fix things. Okay. This is how we're progressing.
Yeah.